Hello everyone, Happy New Year and a big welcome to Paula's Marathon Run Club. And as part of our expert segment, it is my very great honour to welcome to the podcast a great friend, Tony Bignell, fellow Loughborough University student and now Vice President of Nike Running Footwear. Thank you, Tony, for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Tony.
So hopefully as well, people can listen to this at any time through the year, but for those listening right now, that is a Happy New Year part right now done. And as part of that, I think it's important at this time of year to think about goals for the year ahead. And some of those are life goals, some of those are running goals, some of those are personality, moral goals and codes for the year, I guess. But Tony, one thing that I really clearly remember is way back in 92 when we were at university, you already had set that goal of becoming a big shot shoe designer working at Nike, and you realized that you worked all the way through to that. So I think telling us a little bit about that journey and how you kind of went rung by rung up that ladder and stayed true to yourself through it.
Oh, well, that's nice. Well, don't think I want to be a big shot, but I did want to try and make some running shoes. So I wasn't a very good runner, and I wasn't a really good at college either, and I could draw a little bit, but not that well. So I tried to put all those together and I just had a sort of passion for shoes. I just wanted to make athletes better, make athletes faster. And I'm just so excited that I can still be part of the sport that I loved back then and love just as much today. So, yeah, I was at college with you two incredible people. And from there, I went on. I worked for a company called Mitre Sports in Huddersfield in England, designing some football boots, rugby boots, and then I went to work at Nike in 1996. So it's been a long time, 28 years, and I've loved every minute. So Paula, we've worked together for lots of years, marathons. I've been lucky enough to be around you, and Olympic Games and World Championships. So it's been a fun one, and I love what I do today. It's good fun, really good fun.
And for context, I can remember Tony's dorm room absolutely covered in drawings of shoes stuck all over the walls. And people used to laugh a little bit then, but they probably laughed less so when you were sat down with Bill Bauman chatting through how the running shoe and the waffle race actually came about.
It's been a long journey, and I've done lots of different things. I started as a designer. I became a developer, which is kind of like an engineer, and now I'm probably more in sort of people leadership, product marketing. But yeah, but it's good fun. I think it's actually really simple. I mean, running is really simple, but we tend to make it really complicated. I think that's probably going to be some of the things we'll talk about on the podcast.
But on that, I did bring a couple of props, Tony. See if you can date these. And can you see that?
Oh, yeah. Look at that. God, that was Athens. That seems Athens time. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
the Paula
post-Athens.
racer.
Yeah, it's actually on the label. I'm cheating because it does say Holiday 08 on the label. And it's the Zoom Marathoner. But because basically one of the questions that I wanted to put to you was carbon plates aren't new, right? I can remember running in carbon plates on foot with Addy on the track in 2000, but what we couldn't work out was a way to run off the track in them and to get anywhere near those performance benefits. So we went from that to that.
Yes.
Or this now, which is the current Alpha Fly. And basically the difference, the key, it is the plate, isn't it? But it's something else in there that works with the plate.
Yeah, I think that there's sort of footwear's changed over time, and really the biggest thing I think you're trying to get at is cushioning, protection, because running, it hurts. I mean, it hurts your body, and some people are able to run barefoot, but most people aren't. So you're looking for a bit of protection. And then, actually your foot or your whole body is really clever. So you really want to let it do as best naturally as it can. So I think that's sort of number two. And over the years, the industry has tried to like bend your foot and shape your foot and move your foot. And I think your body always wins. Your body's really way smarter. So where we are today is to go faster, you need great cushioning. Also, you need to have lightweight. That's really a big deal, because the lighter you are, the quicker you can run. That's pretty obvious. And then the plate piece that you talked about, that really helps with propulsion. It really helps like a rocking chair, just move your body from the back to the front quicker and more efficiently. So where we are today, all of those things have kind of combined. You've now got these really light super foams. You've got some plates that help kind of yeah, rocking chair is maybe the best example. Just tips you forward, puts you in a better place to run. And then it's also super light. I bet the shoe, actually, the new shoe is probably it might even be lighter than the shoe you used to run in. So,
Yeah,
but
I think
uh,
it is.
but yeah, so and
Yeah.
we're always trying to learn, and running is funny because what runners love is they love to run and they don't want to get hurt. They love to do what they want to do, but we also know we're all runners, and running sucks. I've just got off the treadmill here in Portland, Oregon, and it's a grind, so you do need the motivation, and you do need to make it a little bit easier if you can. So that's what we're trying to do every day.
Is there a one shoe fits all, or should the shoe adapt to the person and to the type of training that you're doing as well?
I definitely don't believe there's a correct shoe. And it's funny, we've got this amazing lab at Nike where we run hundreds and thousands of athletes through trying them on all different types of shoes. And there's almost a direct correlation between what you feel like you think you want and what makes it best for your body. Like it's really, really interesting. So my recommendation is some people, when they run, they don't want to feel the ground. They just want to, bounce along. They don't want to have all the stresses and strain. Some people, Paula, I know you well, you do want to feel the ground. You want to work the
Mm.
ground. You want to bounce into your next stride. So some people are looking for sort of this responsive cushioning. And then some people just need a bit of help. They might have sore knees, sore back. So I think there's sort of three different types of runners, but I think the best way to do that is just to go into a running store, try some on, try and go for a run in them, and just see which one feels best and most natural for you, because everybody's built differently and everyone's biomechanics are different too.
Tony, I just wanted to go back a little bit to when we talked about when this carbon shoe and like Paula mentioned how the foam kind of changed the game a little bit. Just for a bit of history from my side, the marathoner shoe that Paula showed was I ran in that in 2011 in my first marathon, and I got it, I think around, it would have been 2006, would that make sense?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember getting it and I said to myself, I'm going to run my first marathon in this shoe, and I kept it, that very shoe in the box, right up until the day I ran in 2011 my first marathon at London Marathon, because I just thought there's not going to be a better shoe than this ever again. I couldn't have been more wrong. But so I know what you're talking about with the feel the ground and all that, but and as Paula mentioned about the carbon plate has been around for a while. So did the shape of the carbon plate change once you got the foam into maximizing the foam? Like how did you play around with that? Because obviously you almost had one component but needed the second component, and then how that kind of came together to make the shoe as we know today.
Yeah, for sure. So it was we were around working Olympics, actually with Mo Farah, Galen, and Elliot Kipchoge, and we were trying lots of different things. We've actually found this foam, Chris, in South London of all places, and it's a foam that is super, super light, and it's used to send packages up into space, actually, because it's so light, and it's also used in the bumpers of cars to stop impacts, so it kind of dissipates impact and pushes you back really quickly. So one of our scientists found this foam, but they didn't use it for shoes. We started to make some shoes out of it, and a lot of the runners back then really just liked it. It just really bounced along, but it also felt quite squirrely. It was, like there was lots of movement in the shoes, so depending on how you ran, it could sort of throw you left, right, and center. So we were working with this foam. Then actually we were working with carbon plates, actually with Mo, just on very, very lightweight, minimal shoes. And then we sort of put the two together, and sandwiching them together seemed like it made sense. And then really the breakthrough was actually curving this plate. So having this curvature, which again, like I said, like it's a bit like a rocking chair, that sort of sandwiched the materials together and made them less squirrely, but it also tipped and pushed your foot forward. So that was kind of where we started, and there was a little bit of all those things coming together, because you knew if you could make it light, the most inefficient part of your foot is the front of your foot, the metatarsals, because there's so many moving parts there. So one, you want to make it light. Two, you really want to lock those metatarsals together so they're less, or they're more efficient, is what I should say. And then the third thing is just pounding. I mean, like 26 miles, it doesn't matter, 3 miles, 1 mile of pounding hurts you. So taking off that pounding off your body, which is really the thickness, was kind of the that was what the science told us. And then we were trying to figure out playing with all of those things together. And today, Paula, the shoe you showed, it has this Zoom Air in the forefoot, and that material is better at returning energy than any foam, is actually any material that we know. So really what you're trying to do is a bit like a battery. You're trying to store up as much energy as you can, and then that goes and it bounces you off into your next foot strike. You know, you can never get back more than you put in unless you have a battery, like an electric bike or something, which I'm not opposed to for running, by the way. Not the lights, but for helping me this morning would have been nice.
It's funny, I can play it back now because I was trying to explain that difference to Raf yesterday because he was doing hill reps and he was wearing his Alpha Fly, and I was trying to explain why he was going up the hill faster than me. Nothing to do with the fact that he's only 14 and getting stronger all the time. And I was trying to explain about the fact that I didn't realise that the Air was even better than the foam. So that's why the Alpha Fly is more chosen now over the Vaporfly, is it?
That's right, yeah. And you know, that for people who really get in and load the forefoot of the shoe and then bounce off and you really work the road, I think that works really well. People who, you know, might be more heel to toe or midfoot, then I think other shoes can be better too. The tighter you tune it, the more specific it gets. The looser you tune it, maybe the more approachable or democratic it is for lots of different runners. But
because I'm just going through those hoops now trying to think which shoe I might wear for Tokyo. And I guess I had gone with the Vaporfly before.
Yeah, you land hard on your forefoot, I seem to remember. Really crushed that part of your foot, so maybe having a zoom bag there isn't the greatest place to land, you know, like you're not working all the way through your feet, so it might just depend. And I sort of go back to what feels best, like honestly. I think, and Chris, like you're right on that shoe. Like, if it feels good and you feel good, you look good, you're ready. Like it does play a big difference. I mean, you can do all the science you want in the world, but there's a lot to just feeling good and being right as well.
Well, key to that point, Tony, I was going to touch on when we ran in Paris, and because we went and took part in the 10K in Paris, didn't we, in the Marathon Portuse, which is not the full distance, but the 10K, and it started late at night, and we both said we were just going to jog around because we were working all through the day and the next day, and we got caught up in the atmosphere, didn't we, and started way too fast.
Well, you did.
But it was still great.
Did. I was hanging on. I was hanging on for dear life until you dropped me, but I couldn't hold on. But it was great. That was a really good experience. But yeah, I think I ran that first mile faster I'd run a mile in a decade. But no, it was good. It's really good.
I think everyone can probably, when they put a carbon shoe on for the first time, tell a story about they went a little bit faster than they should have done and got a little bit carried away. I know from my first experience of a carbon shoe, I ran the big half in just before the pandemic and the shutdown, and I was racing Bignell and a lot of others, and I ran the first mile. I think it was in sub 4:10, and I didn't know what was happening. I just thought, all I thought in my head was, I'll just go with it. I'll just see what happens. And Andy Vernon, a good friend of mine, said he's never run a half marathon and gone through in 4:24 for a mile and been dropped by so much. And I just was like, this is what everyone's talking about. It was just whoa, what's just happened? But yeah, amazing. Everyone's got that kind of story. But when you talk about how people, it's important that they find the shoe that A feels good, but there is an actual difference to what some of these shoes are doing, like how you roll through, how you land and all that. And so when I was growing up, there was a lot of talk about supination, pronation, and you go into a running shop and people would, that's the kind of conversations. But still now, it's not just as simple as put on the first shoe you find it, or the one that is the latest shoe from a particular brand. There is going to be the right fit and the right response, because we do respond differently. But moving on from that, I wanted to ask you about your opinion on this kind of, obviously these shoes help with recovery and there's a performance gain, but do you think there's a conditioning aspect to that, about how much you should wear the shoe versus rotating shoes to help with that conditioning and help bring out the best in the shoe and for you?
I mean, for sure, these super shoes make it easier. I mean, they absolutely do. So we've measured a lot of our athletes. They can be 6, 7, 8% faster or more efficient in the shoe. So it's a lot. Like, you can do the math.
Wow.
And actually the math is the same whether you're running 2 hours for the marathon or 10 hours for the marathon, or say 5 or 6, as long as you're running, say 4 or 5 hours for the marathon. So actually, the longer you're on your feet, the better the time is, or the more time gain you can get back. So to answer your question in a really long way, I think there's like a training piece and then there's a racing piece, and they can either be the same or they can be separate. But I would call those completely separate things, because you're doing different things in training than you are in racing. As a cheesy Nike plug, running is complicated, but we're going to have 3 shoes. That's what we're going to go to in 2025. So we're going to have a Pegasus, a Vomero, and a Structure, because there's so many names, there's so many shoes. And the Pegasus would be that you're working the road. You're going to be lighter on your feet. You're hitting the ground, working the road. The Vomero would be really soft. You wouldn't feel the ground. And the Structure is something that's going to give you a bit more supportive cushioning. So all 3 are cushioning: responsive cushioning, maximum cushioning, and supportive cushioning. And it would really depend on where you tend to do that. But you can also use those shoes for different times of the week. So if you're going for a long run, maybe you just don't want to feel the ground. You just want to get out, run for an hour, run for 2 hours, whatever you're doing. And then other times in the week, you might want to run faster. You might want to be in something like a Pegasus to go quicker. So, and then we have a bunch of shoes that generally they've got Fly in the name: Alpha Fly, Vapor Fly, Street Fly. And they're like the faster shoes. And I think those really depend, a bit like we were talking with Paula, on how you actually race. But generally you get more benefits, more metabolical benefits. So the percentage gets higher as the shoe gets, actually the shoe probably gets more expensive, because you're using better foam, better carbon, better materials. But again, there isn't really one shoe for anybody. That was a really, really long answer. But I think there's a training piece where you don't want to get hurt. And then there's a racing piece where you really want to run as fast as you can. So I would look at those 2 things in different pieces. And I also recognize people can't buy hundreds of pairs of shoes, but I think if you could buy 2, I would buy one that just feels good. Either you do want to feel the road or you don't want to feel the road. And then in the racing piece, I would have the one that gives you the biggest benefit on the day, because you paid a lot of money and you spent a lot of time getting there. So I would take every percentage benefit I could. But that's what I will do.
So I guess in that there's 2 questions, isn't there? Because that's the big thing I think that's changed certainly from my time racing, and probably from Tomo's as well, is that we would never have dreamt of training ever really for your long runs in the racing shoe, whereas now you can do that. And that time from long run to long run, I think I was really pushing it to be at 8 days, and now people can do 1 a week and recover because of the advances in shoe technology. So I think that's the biggest first change. And then the second question that we had is there a longevity base one on the shoe? Like, can you say like this many miles or this many weeks of running in it?
No, so I think maybe the first one, these super shoes, generally they stop your feet moving around, your metatarsals, your toes. They're really like, you're kind of put in this artificial position. So that's great. It makes you faster, but it's bad because eventually it makes you weaker. So either when you're not running in the shoes, do you walk around the house barefoot? Do you do other things to strengthen your feet during the week? That could be, then you could train all the time, I think, in your racing shoes. That would be just fine. If you weren't going to do that, I would train in a shoe that, you move around a little bit more, and then race in something that's a little more artificial. And generally shoes, I would say for all brands, generally shoes last about 400 miles. I mean, that's a sort of, it feels like an industry standard, but it really depends on.
Yeah. That hasn't changed from when I was running. That's why I guess I would put it at 300 to 400
Yeah,
miles.
eventually foam is fine. I mean, foam is petrol, and it's a bunch of little holes, so there are all these little, it's like polystyrene little home. So eventually they get compacted and compacted and compacted and compacted down. And eventually it loses its spring back. So at some point you're sort of losing the efficiency of the foam, and you can hurt yourself. So, but it all does depend on how you run. Do you land on your heel? Do you land on your forefoot? Are you light? Are you heavy? And there isn't really it's not really like heavy people need shoes quicker. That's not always the case. It's just how quickly you break down the foam.
Would speed matter, do you think, on that? So the force you
So, because I think the harder you're hitting it, the more impact you're putting in on the foam, I think would wear it out quicker. I do, Chris. Yeah. So I think it's really the impact. I don't have a scientific answer for that, but yeah, the harder you work it, the quicker it's going to wear out, I think.
What about the tabletop
Yes.
test? We did that one earlier, didn't we, Tris? So my dad used to say, put your shoes on the table and get eye level with it and see if it's sitting straight and the heel cups sitting straight. And if it's not, then bin them.
I think that's right. I think also, I mean, I get shoes for free, and I'm cheap as well, and I don't change them that often because I get in them and I like them and I don't change them. And it's a bit like a toothbrush. I mean, you could be lazy and have it for a year if you wanted, but I think there is something to mark it on your calendar and binning them, because binning them is the wrong. Use them for mowing the lawn.
donate them.
Donate them. Thanks, Chris.
So can you, because we were discussing this about to keep the conditioning to help make it longer in terms of, because especially in the winter, if a shoe gets wet and then you can aggressively dry them in a dryer, which Paula pointed out, that's not a good idea. So is there ways of drying these shoes out or looking after them just to give them that extra few miles in the gas tank, so to speak?
Yeah, I think leaving anything wet is not good. So the quicker you can dry it out, I think I would just bring it in the house, maybe stick some newspaper inside. I mean, it seems pretty like the basics, but that's probably better than bouncing around in a tumble dryer. And you can do it. We test our shoes the same way because we know people do that all the time. But if you bring it in the house, dry them from the inside and the outside, brush off any dirt you can, I think that will eat into it, and they're pretty durable. I think they're pretty durable. So
On that one thing as well, Tony, I remember when I was racing, this is what I would do with my racing shoes, is hold them above a kettle till they were steamed, and then obviously with a thick pair of socks, put my foot in it so that it molded exactly to my foot. Is that something that you still need to do with today's shoes, or not so much?
I think what's funny, every professional footballer does that right now. Every professional footballer in the Premier League would do that. They have their boots in a steam and they bring them out and then they mold them because they're really trying to make that material be really supple. I think lots of the uppers are pretty supple today, so I'm not sure if you have to. But again, it might depend on your feet. It might depend on the bone structures. It might depend on how you like shoes to fit. So I think it won't do the shoes any harm, and it will just make them feel better. So I would recommend trying it. Why not?
Yeah, don't do that with your foot in the shoe at the time. Is there any I'm interested by that whole, when you mentioned about how the strength in your feet can kind of be lost a little bit by wearing the shoes quite a bit and looking at conditioning the feet in between. Is there any tips or any pro athletes that you've come across have had any interesting kind of ways of doing that? Or, I mean, I remember doing things like sandpit walking, but not everyone has a sandpit. Or my physio used to talk about standing on one foot while I'm brushing my teeth, but something like that you kind of encountered from any athlete.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, like, honestly, those two you mentioned, the things everybody says, or just take your shoes off when you're inside. I mean, just like simple. I mean, just walk around in your socks rather than your shoes. I think just using your toes, working them. It's just all those tiny micro muscles. And I mean, simple things like, doing calf raises, moving your toes, standing on a edge of a stairway, letting your heels drop down. I think we've all done exercises like that, but I think those are really, 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 truly important. And it's funny because a lot of our African athletes who generally have run barefoot and then now in the super shoes, you can see that gap even bigger. So they spend a lot of time in like Nike free shoes when they come out of their shoes, or we put them in those shoes all the time, and they're just shoes that just are cut so that they move more naturally. And you don't have to make your feet that tired. I think it's just over time. You just gotta work them.
So Tony, this podcast is about obviously people getting ready for a marathon as well. I know it was a while ago, but you did run a marathon back. It wasn't the only one, was it? You ran several, right?
I've done a few.
Yeah.
I've done a few, but very slowly.
But I remember you ran the one in 2006. So when I was pregnant with Isla, You ran with Gary and with Steve Cram, and probably some advice that you would pass on is A, not to listen to your friends, but B, not to go off too fast, I guess, from that one.
Yeah, probably don't be drinking the night before is probably a good one. And then I think it's like just don't go too fast. It's a long way, like it feels like everybody says the human body can run about 20 miles pretty easily, and that could be 16, it could be 24, but there's somewhere in there. Almost every athlete I've ever talked to has said that. So the race doesn't really start till the last 6 miles. So you're just better binding your time because you can lose so much time in that last 6 miles that you could never make up in the first 20. So it's really cliche, but it's just go slow, listen to your body. If your body gets excited, Chris, which it does in those moments, like just keep telling it to like slow down, listen to your watch. And then I think once you get to 20 miles, just don't bother listening to your watch anymore. Just let your body take over. It's almost like a game of two halves, I think.
I think that's one of the key points. And I guess our final question was, given that Beatrice Chibet just broke 14 minutes on the road, for a 5K, she's broken 29 minutes for the 10K. With that and the advancement in shoe technology, what can you foresee in the future over the marathon distance?
Yeah, well, she's amazing, isn't she? I mean, that was incredible. And so I think maybe we're going to keep pushing the limits. We've already got our shoe for the LA Olympics. LA 28 Olympics is going. It gives you more energy back within the rules that the shoe companies have now. So I know we're going to get better. I know all the companies are going to get better. That's how things should go. I joked about it at the beginning about the electric bikes, but I actually think that's something that's really interesting because I have a bike. I've always had a bike. I have an electric bike, and I love it. Like there's always that hill that makes you not want to ride your bike. Like I would, but I've just got to go. Like there's always that hill. There's always that reason not to. So I would love to see footwear do the same. I wouldn't have electric bikes be in the Olympics. I mean, there can be two different rules for that, but I just think it's important for people to get out and get moving. So if it makes people walk the doggy better, or my mum get out the door, or just me this morning when I didn't really want to get out and do my run, but I did, then I would take it. Like I just think the benefits of movement far outdo any of those rules. So that's where I'd love to see it go. And the problem is like batteries are, we have some of those shoes, but the problem is the batteries are big. The military use lots of those shoes. Right now we're working with the military on different things to help you move quicker, move faster, but they're big and bulky. So you've kind of got to make sure it's not big and bulky. So, but that was where I'd like to go. I'd just like to see more people moving. So whether you're running a marathon or you're just walking around the block, I think movement is good. It's a good thing.
You are fascinating, Tony. Absolutely brilliant, mate. It really is. I mean, what a way to end the conversation. You've just thrown in something that's made me go, I've got about 20 more questions here.
Each week on this podcast, we are going to invite a guest on to tell their story and to explain why the work that these charities do is so important. And it is a big honour for me to invite my daughter Isla on this week.
Hi, I'm Isla Locke. I'm 17 years old, and this year I'm going to be running the London Marathon with Children with Cancer. When I was 13 years old, I was diagnosed with a malignant germ tumour in one of my ovaries, and I went through about 4 months of chemotherapy. And recently I have just surpassed my 4-year clear mark. So That is one of the main reasons why I want to run the marathon for the first time. Seeing children with cancer and having worked closely with them for the past few years and seeing how much of a difference they can make, not only helping children get through their treatment, but proposing different types of research to be able to open more doors. Obviously, not every single cancer can be cured, and that is a massive hurdle in a lot of people's treatments. And seeing the charity pour so much money and so many people making so many donations, and for example running marathons and doing stuff to be able to raise all this money to help so many more children, is so inspiring, and why I want to try and make a difference in 2025.